My mother was a butterfly baby. The slightest touch could injure her skin, leaving painful wounds. To protect her, my father lined our entire house in expensive silk. Nothing sharp was allowed inside. I loved painting, but brushes were banned. I loved music, but violence was forbidden. Every dream I ever had was snuffed out before it could even begin, all because of my mother's illness. My father always looked at me with that tired, pleading expression, "Your mother is sick, Mia. You have to be patient with her." But back then, I was only 4 years old. I remember the day I came home from school. The moment I walked through the door, my mother slapped me across the face hard for no reason at all. Before I could even cry, everyone rushed to her side. My father pointed an accusing finger at my face. "Look what you did to your mother's hand. Why are you always so selfish?" He slapped my other cheek, then scooped up my mother, whose fingers were already hurt, and ran out of the house to the hospital. I was thrown against the coffee table. Suddenly, a sharp pain spread across my own skin, just like hers. And in that terrifying moment, the doctor's words for my physical exam the previous year finally clicked. "She carries the genetic markers for EB. It could activate at any time." My vision began to fade. I collapsed to the floor, terrified and alone. "Mia, what did you do to upset your mother?" This time, my father came rushing down the stairs, catching the tail end of my mother's hand, swinging down to strike me again. A swollen mark burning on my cheek. There was no questioning, no benefit of the doubt, only accusations, disappointment, and pure exhaustion in his eyes. He shoved me aside roughly to get to her, holding her hand with delicate care. He stared at the small injuries forming on her fragile skin, his eyes wide with a desperate, all-consuming devotion. Then he turned back to me, his gaze freezing cold. He grabbed a ceramic mug from the counter and hurled it at my feet. It shattered, pieces flying. "How many times do I have to tell you?" he roared. "Do not upset your mother. Does it just go in one ear and out the other? Her condition is fragile. Look at her hand. It is injured. Is your face made of stone or something?" I lay on the floor, a strange, agonizing pain blooming deep inside my bones. It was a sensation I had never felt before, accompanied by a faint, horrifying ache spreading beneath my skin. I stared at him, my eyes wide with disbelief. I was the one who had just been struck. My mother clung to his chest, her eyes locked onto me. There was a dark, unreachable intensity in her gaze. She screamed at me the minute she walked in. She shrieked, her voice cracking, "Mom, I don't want her here. Send her away. Just get her out of my sight." She dissolved into hysterical screams, hurling venomous words at me. The sheer hatred in her eyes made it feel as though we weren't mother and daughter at all, but mortal enemies. I lay on the cold floor. Even though she had never given me a single warm look in my entire life, my heart felt like it was physically bleeding. My father looked at her injured palms, watching her lose control, and shook his head at me in utter disgust. "I am so disappointed in you, Mia." But when he looked back down at her, his voice instantly softened into a gentle whisper. "It is okay, sweetheart. I'll send her away tonight. I promise you'll never have to look at her again." He lifted her gently in his arms and hurried out the door. My grandparents followed close behind, passing by me without casting a single glance in my direction. And my mother, looking over his shoulder at me, let out a long, quiet sigh of relief. I lay collapsed on the floor, the pain rising like a tidal wave, freezing my limbs. "Dad, Dad." I reached out a trembling hand toward the empty doorway, my voice barely a cracked whisper. As I raised my arm, I finally realized where that strange, painful sensation was coming from. I watched in horror as the skin on my hand tore, stinging with sudden pain. Terror surged through my veins. My back, where I had slammed hard against the floor, throbbed fiercely beneath my torn clothes. The sharp scent in the air made me dizzy. I dragged my heavy body toward the front door, crying out with what little strength I had left. "Help, please, someone help me." Tears spilled over my cheeks, and when the salt touched my fragile skin, the sting became unbearable. I left faint smeared marks behind me as I crawled. But just a few feet from the door, my body gave up. As I lay there in the quiet, my mind drifted back through the years, memories of this house like a broken reel. For as long as I could remember, I knew my mother was different, not just because of her fragile skin, but because other mothers loved their children. Mine hated me. She saw me as a threat, a stain on her perfect world. When I was 6, I showed an incredible talent for painting. The dean of a prestigious art academy had even offered to take me on as his personal student. I had run home clutching the professional brushes he had gifted me, only for my mother to snatch them and throw them to the floor. "What are you trying to do?" she had screamed, backing away. "Are you trying to kill me? If I die, everyone will look at you. Is that what you want?" The stiff bristles had grazed her hand, leaving tiny red scratches. I had stood there frozen in fear as my father rushed home to bandage her. He looked down at me and sighed, "Mia, your mother can't have things like this in the house. No more painting. It ends today." My eyes had filled with tears, but my tears never mattered. And just like that, my talent was buried. When I was only 6 years old, the sudden buzzing of my phone on the table pulled me back from the edge of consciousness. I tried to crawl toward it, but my body felt glued to the floor by exhaustion and pain. The caller didn't have much patience. After 5 short rings, The line went dead. I let my head fall back, staring up at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me. The tears wouldn't stop. My mind kept drifting. I was 10 when a music teacher at an after-school program discovered I had a perfect ear. While other kids struggled to read sheet music, I could recreate any melody after hearing it just once. Desperate for a scrap of approval, I had run to my father. I want to learn the piano. I know Mom can't touch anything sharp or heavy, but we can put it in my room. Okay. My father hesitated, looking like he might actually say yes. But then my mother's voice shrieked from the top of the stairs. Absolutely not. I looked up and saw the hatred in her eyes. She began hitting herself, whispering words I couldn't understand. Her fragile skin quickly bruised and split, and she trembled with pain. For the second time in my life, I froze in fear. My father rushed over and grabbed her wrists. No piano. She won't learn. As he comforted her, I turned away and caught the faint, satisfied smile on my mother's face. My heart sank. After my father finished bandaging her, I returned to my room. I sat by the window staring at an old photo of my mother from before I was born. She looked so different back then. Suddenly, the door slammed open. Why do you want to learn the piano? Her voice was quiet, but the look on her face terrified me. She grabbed my shoulders, her nails digging into my skin. If you play the piano, you think everyone will love you more than me, don't you? I was only 10 years old. I didn't understand what she meant. I only knew that I loved music, but I would never be allowed to play. You are not allowed to learn, she said coldly. In this house, I come first always. If you don't like it, leave. I nodded, too scared to speak. She walked away, leaving me alone on the floor. My second dream was dead. The answering machine beeped, pulling me back to reality. My father's tired voice filled the room. Mia, think about what you've done tonight. Your mother is in the ER. The doctors almost couldn't save her hand. I've told you so many times not to upset her, but you never listen. She suffered so much giving birth to you, and her condition only got worse because of it. You should be grateful. Instead, you keep hurting her. I'm disappointed in you. The machine beeped, ending the call. I wanted to call him back. I wanted him to come home and see the girl lying there, hurt and fading. But I couldn't move. My vision blurred. I didn't scream at her dad. I didn't do anything, but you never believed me. A final tear fell when I was 13. My mother suddenly decided to attend my parent-teacher conference, but halfway through, she exploded. How could someone like her get the third highest grade in the class? She cheated, didn't she? Before I could react, she dragged me from my seat and slapped me. You liar, you cheat. The classroom fell silent. When my teacher tried to stop her, she touched my mother's arm and immediately froze. Everyone stared at us like we were something frightening. My father arrived soon after and rushed my injured mother to the hospital, leaving me alone in the hallway. After that day, I had no friends. The whispers followed me everywhere. Look, it is the freak girl. Where is your psycho mom? I stopped talking. I stopped standing out. I just wanted to disappear. The memory faded as the light above me grew dimmer. The answering machine beeped one last time. My eyes closed and darkness followed me. People always say there is nothing after death, no soul, no consciousness. But they were wrong. There was a soul. I was floating in the air, looking down at my own body lying in a dark stain. I looked so small and fragile, like something that could disappear at any moment. It was pathetic. My chest tightened. I tried to drift closer to my body, but a sudden pull yanked my consciousness away. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in a hospital room. My mother's hands were freshly bandaged. She sat on the bed while my father stood by the window, staring at his phone. After another unanswered call, my grandmother frowned. The girl still isn't answering. My father looked toward the door, a strange sense of unease crossing his face. But my grandmother stopped him. She did the same thing in middle school, running away for attention. She has always been selfish. My father hesitated, then slowly sat back down. I watched them, feeling a bitter ache in my chest. Dad, if you knew I was never coming back, would you actually care? My mother suddenly spoke. Tom, when are you sending her away? My father froze. Rose, you don't want to do it, do you? Her face twisted with anger. I said, get her out of here. I don't want to see her. My father and grandmother immediately rushed to calm her. Okay. I'll arrange it now. We'll send her to a school in Chicago. Calm down, sweetheart. Your bandages are going to tear. Watching them, I finally understood why my mother hated me. She couldn't stand the attention my father and grandparents gave me. In this family, she had to be the only person who mattered. I looked down at my transparent hands. You got what you wanted, Mom. I'm gone. Are you happy now? But no sound came out. The door opened, and the doctor walked in with a serious expression. Is everything all right? My father asked. Her immune system is weakening, the doctor said. Her condition will continue to worsen. She needs to avoid stress. And your home environment needs to be adjusted to prevent injuries. My father's eyes filled with tears. I understand. But the doctor's words only strengthened his decision. After the doctor left, he called his assistant, Franklin. Find a boarding school in Chicago. I don't care about the cost. Get me transfer papers ready immediately. He hung up and gently held my mother. Don't worry, sweetheart. I'm sending her away. Never have to see her again. My mother gave a quiet nod. A familiar coldness spread through my chest. You don't have to fight for his love anymore, Mom. You won. I'm out of your way. That night, my grandparents stayed in the next room, while my father sat beside my mother's bed. I tried to leave, but every time I got too far away, an invisible force pulled me back. I let out a bitter laugh. If my mother knew my ghost was still following her, she would probably hate me even more. My father stared at his phone, looking at the missed calls for my number. A sudden panic appeared in his eyes. He opened our chat history. Mia, your mother's condition is getting worse. I've decided to send you to a boarding school in Chicago. Pack your bags tonight. Franklin will pick you up in the morning.
Try to be mature about this.
I stood beside him, my throat tightening. Be mature. I had heard those words my entire life. To my father, my mother was always the most important person. Even if he discovered I was dead, I wondered if he would simply sigh in relief. Maybe he would even be glad that the source of his wife's suffering was finally gone. My father stared at the phone. 5 minutes passed, and when there was still no reply, he let out a frustrated breath, his brow furrowed. Growing increasingly uneasy, he dialed Franklin again.
Go to the house now. Check on.
Before he could finish the sentence, my mother sat up in bed, gasping in terror. Startled, my father accidentally hit the end call button. On the other end, Franklin looked at his phone, confused by the abrupt disconnect, assuming his boss had dialed by mistake. Yeah, my mother shrieked, her eyes wild with panic. My father quickly turned on the lamp, pulling her into his arms. It is okay. It is okay.
Mia is gone.
I sent her away. My mother slowly calmed down. Don't let her come back. I don't want to see her. I won't, my father promised. I won't let her set foot in New York again. I looked down, my translucent body curling in on itself. For 17 years, my father had believed everything she said without question. When I was 4, she claimed I had tried to poke her with a cake fork. From then on, I was never allowed to have a birthday party. When I was 8, she complained that my hair was too thick and coarse and might scratch her. My father cut my hair into a boy's buzz cut and never let me grow it out. The memories flashed through my mind, cold and biting. Next morning, my father returned to the room with her prescription medication. Just as he pushed the door open, his phone rang. Seeing Franklin's name on the screen, he frowned. Franklin, did you pick up Mia once she is settled in Chicago?
I want you to, sir.
Franklin's voice was shaking, high and terrified. My father's heart skipped a beat. His grip on the phone tightened. What is it you? You need to come home right now, Franklin choked out, his voice cracking with horror. Mia, she is gone. She is lying on the living room floor. Franklin's words shattered the silence. For several seconds, my father didn't move. What did you say? His voice came out barely above a whisper. On the other end of the phone, Franklin struggled to speak. Sir, I came to the house like you asked. I thought she had already left for Chicago, but she was still there. My father's face drained of color.
No.
I'm sorry, sir. The phone slipped slightly in his hand. My mother looked at him from the hospital bed, confused. Tom, he didn't answer. Tom, what happened? Still nothing. For the first time in my entire life, I saw my father look truly afraid. Not afraid for my mother. Not afraid of her illness. Afraid of what he had done. I have to go, he whispered. My mother grabbed his sleeve. Where? He looked at her. And for once, there was hesitation. A tiny crack in the devotion that had surrounded her like armor for years. Home. Her expression changed.
No. It was a small word,
but I felt the fear behind it. Tom, don't leave me alone. He gently removed her hand. I'll be back. But even he didn't sound like he believed it. The drive home felt endless. I followed him from the passenger seat, invisible and silent. For years, I had begged him to look at me, to listen,
to believe me.
Now he was finally going to see the truth. But I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel victorious. I only felt tired. When the front door opened, Franklin was standing there, pale and shaken. Sir, my father rushed past him. Then he stopped. The world around him seemed to freeze. His eyes landed on the place where I had spent my last moments. The little girl he had called selfish. The daughter he thought was a burden. The child he had sent away without even asking if she was okay. His knees weakened. No. Franklin lowered his head. I called emergency services, but
my father didn't hear the rest.
He walked forward slowly, like he was afraid that moving too quickly would make reality become permanent. Mia? Hearing my name from him almost made me disappear. Not because I wanted to, because I had spent so long believing he didn't care. He reached out his hand, but stopped before touching anything. His fingers trembled. Why didn't you answer my messages? A broken laugh escaped him. You always answered. I stared at him, didn't I? Even when I was hurt, even when I was scared, even when nobody believed me, I always answered. Because I was still waiting for my father to choose me. The days after that passed strangely. My funeral was small, not because nobody cared, because nobody knew how much I had been suffering. My classmates came. Some cried. Some whispered apologies. My old art teacher came too. She held one of my abandoned paintings in her hands. I always wondered what happened to her. My father stood nearby, listening. She was one of the most talented students I ever met. His face tightened. Talented. That word hurt him. Because he realized he had heard it before. Many times. And every time, he had buried it. After the funeral, my father went through my room. For 17 years, he had barely entered. It was just a room to him. A place where his daughter stayed. But now he opened the door. And froze. There were no trophies. No certificates displayed. No paintings on the walls. No piano. No evidence that someone with dreams had lived there. Only a small box under the bed. He opened it. Inside were things I had hidden away. A broken paintbrush. Old music sheets. A notebook full of drawings. A letter from my art teacher. My father picked up the notebook with shaking hands. The first page was covered in drawings of butterflies. Not because I loved them. Because I understood them. Fragile. Delicate. Always protected. But also trapped. At the bottom of the page, there was a sentence written in my handwriting. I wonder what it feels like to be something beautiful, without everyone being afraid of hurting you. My father stopped breathing. Then, he turned the page. There were hundreds of drawings. A girl playing piano. A girl standing on a stage. A girl with long hair. A girl smiling. Versions of me that never got to exist. His hand covered his mouth. And for the first time, he cried. Not quietly. Not the tired tears he had shown when my mother was sick. These were tears of someone finally understanding what he had lost. My mother returned home a week later. The moment she stepped inside, she looked around. The house was the same. Silk coverings. Soft furniture. Everything carefully arranged around her. But something was missing. My father. He no longer hovered over every movement she made. He no longer immediately believed every accusation. He just looked at her. Really looked. And I watched her realize something. She had spent years trying to remove me. She had succeeded. But she had also destroyed the person who spent his entire life protecting her. Tom, my father didn't answer. He was holding my notebook. Her eyes narrowed. What is that? He looked down at the pages. Then back at her. It's Mia's. Silence. For the first time, my mother looked uncomfortable. She was always dramatic. My father's expression changed. Not anger. Something worse. Disappointment. She was 4 years old. My mother blinked. What? She was 4 when you convinced me she was dangerous. His voice shook. She was a child. My mother looked away. She hurt me. My father closed the notebook. And I believed you. The room went quiet. I believed you every single time. I stood there watching. I had spent my entire life wanting him to defend me, wanting him to say those words. But now that I heard them, it was too late. My father finally saw me, just not when I was alive. And that was the cruelest part, because I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I wasn't waiting for him to save me. I was already gone. But as I watched him hold my drawings close, I realized something. Maybe the truth didn't arrive when people wanted it to. Maybe sometimes it came after the damage was already done. And maybe the person who needed forgiveness most wasn't the one who hurt me. It was the girl who spent 17 years believing she deserved it. Months passed after my death. The house changed. It changed because my father stopped building his entire life around protecting one person and started facing what he had ignored. He removed the silk coverings from the walls. My mother stared at him in disbelief. What are you doing? My father didn't look at her. Living. That one word hurt her more than any argument could have. For years, everything in that house had been arranged around her fear. But now there were empty spaces everywhere. Spaces where my paintings could have hung. Spaces where my music could have filled the rooms. Spaces where a daughter should have been. My father visited my old art teacher often. Not because he wanted praise. Because he wanted to understand me. What was she like? He asked one day. The teacher smiled sadly. She was quiet. My father lowered his head. She shouldn't have been. She was afraid of taking up space, the teacher continued. But she had so much inside her. Those words stayed with him. Afraid of taking up space. His daughter. The little girl who had once run to him holding a paintbrush. The teenager who had stopped asking for anything. The child who had learned that needing love was somehow a burden. My mother tried to return to the way things were. She tried to blame me. She was always difficult. She always caused problems. She made me sick. But this time, nobody rushed to comfort her. The doctors had reviewed her records. The family had started asking questions. And slowly, the truth came out. Not every injury had been caused by me. Not every fear had been real. Some things had been exaggerated. Some things had been manipulated. My father sat across from her one night, silent. You knew. My mother looked away. I was scared.
No.
His voice was quiet. You were scared of losing attention. Her expression hardened. You don't understand what I went through. He looked at her. I understand what Mia went through. And for once, there was nothing she could say. Years later, my father created a foundation in my name, not to erase what happened. Nothing could do that. He knew that. It was called the Mia Rose Arts Foundation. It gave children opportunities that their circumstances tried to take away. Painting, music, writing, anything they loved. At the opening ceremony, my father stood in front of a crowd holding one of my old paintings. A butterfly. Not trapped in glass. Not hidden away. Flying. My daughter spent her entire life trying to become someone I would be proud of, he said. His voice cracked. But the truth is, I was the one who failed to be someone she could trust. Nobody spoke. I spent years protecting someone who convinced me my own child was a threat. He looked down at the painting. I cannot change the past. A tear slipped down his face. But I can make sure other children are heard before it is too late. I watched from somewhere beyond them. At first, I thought I would feel angry. I thought seeing him finally understand would make me happy. But it didn't. Because the girl who wanted that apology was gone. The little girl waiting at the door for her father to come home was gone. The teenager, hiding her dreams, was gone. What remained was only a memory. And strangely, that was okay. Because for the first time, I wasn't defined by what they took from me. Not my mother's hatred. Not my father's blindness. Not the dreams I never got to chase. I was Mia. A girl who loved painting. A girl who loved music. A girl who deserved to be loved. And somewhere in the endless quiet, I felt something I had never felt in that house. Freedom. The final thing I saw was my father placing my painting in a gallery. A butterfly flying across a bright blue sky. Underneath, it were the words I had written years ago. Even fragile things deserve a chance to fly. And this time,
I did.
Years later, people remembered Mia's name. Not because of the tragedy. Not because of the family that failed her. But because of everything she had been before they took pieces of her away. The Mia Rose Arts Foundation grew bigger every year. Children who had once been told they were too strange, too fragile, or not good enough found a place where they could create freely. Every year on her birthday, her father visited the gallery. He always stood in front of the same painting.
The butterfly.
The one she had drawn when she was only a child. A butterfly with damaged wings, but still flying. For a long time, he thought it represented her suffering. Eventually he understood. It represented her strength. My mother never returned to the person she pretended to be. Without everyone constantly protecting her, she had to face the consequences of her choices. The family that once surrounded her slowly disappeared. Because love built on fear never lasts. She spent years angry at everyone else. At my father. At the doctors. At the world. But the one person she could never escape was herself. My father visited my grave every week. At first he apologized. Over and over. He told me he was sorry for every time he ignored me. Every time he chose someone else's pain over mine. Every time he told me to be patient when I was the one hurting. But eventually his visits changed. He stopped only talking about regret. He started talking about me. He told me about the children at the foundation. The paintings they created. The music they played. The dreams they chased. He wanted me to know that something good came from my life. And somehow, I did. If I could have spoken to him one last time, I wouldn't have asked why he didn't save me. I already knew the answer. He was too lost in someone else's suffering to see mine. Instead, I would have told him one thing. Don't spend the rest of your life mourning me. Make sure nobody else becomes me. And he did. The world never learned every detail about what happened inside that house. But it didn't need to. Because Mia Rose was no longer remembered as the girl who was abandoned. She was remembered as the girl who loved art. The girl who loved music. The girl who proved that even the most delicate things could survive. The girl who, despite everything, still found a way to fly. And somewhere beyond the pain, beyond the memories, beyond the life I lost, I finally felt light. No fear. No anger. No loneliness. Just peace. Because my life had ended too soon.